We are live. We are live. Good to see you. Finally, we are doing this, Matt.
Yeah, I know. It's been, I think, about 3 or 4 years since we had a few too many beers. The podcast equipment gets bought. It just sits on the table unwrapped. But yeah, I think a few years and halfway around the world later, we have our first attempt at a podcast.
Yeah. For those who don't know, so my name is Alex. This is my friend Matthew. We've been working together for some time. We had an amazing experience as expatriates in Malaysia, right? And we've been talking about doing this conversation for really, really long time. And finally, this is happening. Finally, I'm glad. Thank you for hosting me, Matt. And I wanted to congratulate you on your fatherhood. Because you just been, you became father of a little boy a few months ago.
Yeah. So Theo is 4.5 months now. So it's been a crazy few months, but it's been, amazing. And yeah, it's good to have this chat after so many years.
Okay, no, great. So the reason for this podcast, Matt, honestly, is to have a conversation, to share about your experience, because you and I, we've been working overseas for some time, and I know there are a lot of young folks out there who are also would like to have some kind of international career, or who are looking, for some kind of guidance in terms of help them with expatriation. Should they go or should they stay, right? So I think this knowledge that we have, because we lived it from within, can be very valuable. So I don't know if you have any few words to add to this.
Yeah, definitely. I think between us it's close to 10 years in Malaysia. I think about 5 years. So definitely a lot of knowledge on the whole country from a working perspective we have, and just the experience on what it's like to pick up your life and fly somewhere else and sort of start there. So yeah.
On the other side of the world, indeed. Yeah. You and I, we've been in the professional world for more than 10 years now, doing what we know the best, HR function. And I think there are a lot of young folks out there who would like to start a career in HR, who would like to understand better how the world of work operates. And I think it will be useful for them to learn from our experiences, right? So, Can you explain, because you and I, we moved to Malaysia. How did it happen to you? Because I understand it was a bit of an adventure in the first place, right?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one actually, and something that at the time, or a year before it happened, I would have never have pictured it. So I think I was about 24 when I started working for Slumjay, which is, I'm 32 now, so what's that, about 8 years ago. We started working in the office in Crawley. So Slumjay is it's a global company. They had offices in lots of different locations. I started working there originally as a contractor doing e-filing, so scanning bits of paper literally and then saving them into specific folders to remove the need for having this paperwork. So the intention was, just to make some money while looking for my full-time job. And I got kind of lucky, let's say, or not lucky, but right place, right time. And I think a good work attitude and a good opportunity came up to start working there. I started as an HR hub, and I was part of the HR IT team. And then I think after about a year of working there as a full-time employee, there was sort of a few rumors circulating. The office is going to close down and relocate to somewhere else in the world. And typically with a big organization, when these rumors start, I think they tend to be true, and they just sort of bubble over and over, and little bits of information gets leaked here and there. And it finally came out after about 18 months, right, the new office location is going to be Kuala Lumpur. It's going to be the 3 hubs on the Eastern Hemisphere, which was currently Dubai, and the one in Gatwick, and I can't remember where the other one was. Douala, Cameroon, that was it. All going to centralise into Kuala Lumpur. Like I said, 24 at the time. It was kind of like, do you want to go? Would you be interested? And, it was like, yeah, of course, why not? I was still living at home. This opportunity, you'd heard about it in Slumjay. Again, it was an international company, lots of mobile employees, but you don't know if the opportunity would happen for you. But yeah, it's an opportunity. Why would I turn it down? Yeah, living at home after uni, just working, sort of, having that living for the weekend type attitude with friends, going out. And then this opportunity came to go to a different country, almost halfway around the world. He said yes. And then a few months later, all of a sudden the contract arrives on your desk. Do you want to go? And it's sort of like the business time to sign or decline. But I think we were all quite excited. I think we were quite lucky in that respect that the entire office was moving. So there was around 10 of us that, although we weren't particularly friends at that time, we were a similar age. So we knew we were going to arrive and not be like stranded, and we'd have a good time. So yeah, that was how we ended up there. And I think it was January. The flight was booked for like the 31st of January, and had Christmas with all friends and family, a few leaving parties in January. Then all of a sudden we're on the flight to Kuala Lumpur.
That's amazing, and yes, it was a great opportunity. I remember it quite well, when this announcement happened. But I'm curious to know how much before moving to Malaysia you actually knew about the country.
I don't think I knew anything at all, to be honest. I don't think it's a country people know too much about. I think so. You have Singapore to the south, Thailand to the north. For backpacking locations, I think people are either typically picking Singapore or Thailand. Malaysia perhaps goes a bit under the radar. I think the most I knew about it was the Petronas Towers from the film with Sean Connery. I can't think what it's called, where they steal a diamond or something.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, Sean Connery.
But it didn't really have any sort of prior knowledge to what the country was going to be.
Did you know anyone from Malaysia before, or do you have any friends at least who visited? I mean, how did you try to document yourself about the country?
I think so. I knew one person, and that was like my second boss in Schlumberger, Adrina, who still works there. She was like really great boss actually. We were working on a project at the time, but I wasn't reporting for her for too long before she moved on to a different position. And I think at the time, it was quite early on in my career and quite young in age. I wasn't necessarily asking her questions or spending time with her like, oh, what's things like in Malaysia? And I didn't know about the move at the time. My brother had been backpacking in Australia, and he came back and stopped in Kuala Lumpur, and he said it was a really great city. But aside from that, it was just Google, fun things to do in Malaysia. And there was like just, typical things of backpacking, of like, oh, this is what you can expect, places that are fun to go and things like that. So that kind of started the, I guess, general excitement of what it was going to be like there, but still was quite an unknown, to be honest.
Okay, so you got your tickets booked, right? You prepared, you packed all the essentials, you land in Malaysia. What's your first impression?
It was too hot. It's sort of close to the equator. It's a tropical country. It's extremely humid. You walk out of the airport and the humidity hits your face, and you're like, Jesus, this is going to be a struggle coming from the UK. You kind of start sweating and you don't stop sweating. But, it's quite exciting. The journey from the airport to the city is quite long, sitting in the taxi trying to look out the windows and think all it is like the palm farms. So just on the side of the road, there's not much to look at until you get start getting into KL. And then it was just the excitement, I think, of being in a big city. If you look at the skyline there, there's a lot of tall buildings, a lot of tall condos, apartments. So it's like looking out for the Petronas Towers, trying to see what you can see, and just a general excitement of what was going on, I suppose.
Okay. I remember my first days landing, because I don't know about you, but for me it was the first time in Asia overall. Same. So I've been to Dubai before. I had like some kind of understanding, like what a mega city could look like. But my expectations about Malaysia were like, I mean, again, like same as you say, like very much unknown. You know, it's a country which is like, I think, very low key on the international area. The only thing that we knew is pretty much Petronas, right? Petronas because of Formula One and the international exposure that it gets. And I think Jimmy Choo as well. That's a designer.
Oh yeah, so Jimmy Choo I only knew when we went to, is it Penang? I think it's in Penang, and they have the like iron, like the art on the walls to tell you about like certain things in Penang, and there's like a section that's dedicated to Jimmy Choo. But I think even at the time I was like, you know, I didn't know beforehand, but being there, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Jimmy Choo is a famous fashion designer that is originated from Malaysia, right? So could you explain like why, or what's on your opinion, why Malaysia in the first place? Why Malaysia is so attractive, and why businesses decided to settle in the country?
I mean, I think it's a tough question to answer, but I know that I think there's like quite a big talent pool in KL. Like I sort of noticed once we'd been there, there's lots of other hubs that have started up there for shared service organizations. So I think, yeah, there's a large talent pool. I think probably from a, you know, company perspective, there's probably some good tax breaks for starting a new company. I think something like, I remember hearing like for the first 5 years, they have some tax breaks. But yeah, I think just essentially the talent pool, the time zones for servicing that part of the world is good. And then of course, ultimately, like anything with business, there's a cost element to it. So the 3 hubs I mentioned, one being in Gatwick and one being in Dubai and the third in Douala, the cost going to KL and centralizing services is going to have a big impact. And, you know, with these big organizations, one tends to lead and the rest will follow a business model once they see it being successful.
Right. And as you said, yeah, absolutely. Like I was struck when I realized like it's such an English speaking country overall, right?
That's true.
You know, because obviously after spending some time there, we realized that Malaysia actually is very diverse in terms of culture, right? You have to call like native population that qualifies Bumiputra, right? And then you have also a Chinese minority, Indian minority, right? But in the large cities, especially like Kuala Lumpur, everyone pretty much is fluent in English, right? All the signs, all the business is being done in English, despite not being the official language in the country, right? The economy operates in English, and that's a major difference with the countries, I will say, like Thailand in particular, right? Or even Indonesia, right? Where the local population is not that fluent.
I think even on like the first full day we had there, it was like a week, I think we must have flown on a Friday, so like the Saturday or Sunday, we were like, oh, let's go out and explore. And language is one of those things you wonder how you're going to get around. And we got into a taxi, and the guy spoke English. It was a bit of a surprise that, you know, it's a taxi driver that you would consider not a job that someone would need a degree for, would need to speak English, but his level of English was like amazing. He could tell us where we wanted to go, sort of thing, with our you know, rough description of what we wanted to see. And yeah, it's like a theme throughout. It made I think the settling in quite gentle, the fact that it is easy to use English. So that was a good point.
So after spending, like I will say, like after arriving there, you go through some type of adaptation, right? But how long you estimate your adaptation period, and what are the major cultural differences that actually you faced in the country?
I think like the settling in period, I think we were helped a lot by the fact that we were there as a group. So we already had like a friendship circle that we knew, like on the weekends we can go out and go exploring with people. We weren't kind of like immediately thrown in the deep end of trying to make friends, because as an adult, making friends is something that's probably not very natural to us. But I think on the whole as well, like Malaysian people were quite friendly. In the office, everyone that's kind of wanted to chat and was like super open about sharing places to go to try different foods and things like that. So yeah, settling in wasn't really a problem at all. I think the main things as being an expat would be to find somewhere to live quickly, because although it may sound fun being in like a hotel or a serviced apartment, it's really not. At the end of the day, you just want your own place that you can have your own things and relax in. So yeah, on the settling in time, I think I had a bit of a different experience, because originally I was meant to be going to Dubai and I was only going to Malaysia for a short-term assignment, and that short-term assignment was going to be 3 months in Malaysia for the transition, but it just ended up extending full-time. So once that was finalised, I think I moved in with a friend for a month or so, and then I found my own place. And as soon as that was settled and you have like, you know, all your own things there, it really helps. You know, you hear some stories of people that they can't find a place to live, so they stay in the hotel or whatever, and it's a nightmare. No one wants to be living in a small box room with a TV on the wall. It's not a way to live. Cultural differences is, again, like I think the biggest one would be religion. So it's a Muslim country. Coming from the UK, where although it's a Christian country, I don't think it's particularly practiced by a large majority anymore, where the religion makes up most of, I think, the community and culture. But I think where it's mostly like obvious is you'd have the call to prayer, which I think the first time you hear it really early in the morning is a bit like, oh, what's that? Something interesting. And of course, the women there will dress in the traditional like Muslim dress, which would be the headscarf. So that's something that you don't see so much here in the UK. Perhaps if you're in London, you're going to be more familiar with it, but I grew up outside of London and in a village, so it wasn't something you're really experiencing. But then, yeah, like it's a very friendly, welcoming country. So although there is the obvious differences, people there, I think it enables you to feel quite relaxed as a country to be in, and quite a cool place. And if you like sports or football, like the Premier League is massive out there, so it's really quick and easy to sort of find a connection. If you go out and watch sports, people will maybe like chat to you about it, and you can find friends that way. I remember we started playing 11-a-side football, and the contact for that we got was via a Grab driver. So Grab is basically the Uber equivalent in Malaysia, for those that don't know. And the guy just said, oh, do you want to play football? And then instantly there was like another 15 people that we had then met, that you then have a social life with outside of your work colleagues. So I think, if you have your hobbies and you know that's what you want to do and you go looking for it, it's easy to find a community away from work as well. So yeah, although culturally the religion is quite an obvious one you see, I don't think it's something that anyone should be afraid of if they're going to go or thinking about moving to another country.
You're saying it very right. I think sports unites people overall across the world, right? It doesn't matter which language you speak. Ultimately, sports is universal, right? And things like football, the most practiced sport, English Premier League is so well known across the boards. So definitely big plus, like something to engage conversation with people. Like football is really helpful. On the other side, as you pointed out, right? Despite those like cultural differences, I think like Malaysia is a very safe place overall.
I think as well, like working in Slumjay, one of the things that is really good there is the diversity wherever you're working. So I think when I first started, the team I was in originally in the UK, there's maybe like 11 people, and I think we must have had 1, 2, 3, 4, so almost half the team was not English or not British. So straight away you're having you're working with people from different nationalities and different backgrounds. Like my first 2 managers were non-British. My third one was a British guy, and then since then I haven't had another British manager. So it's like from straight away you're interacting with people from different cultures and different nationalities and different backgrounds. So it early on raises changes the way you're thinking and how you're going to approach and work with people.
So now that you talk about like approaching people and their attitude towards work, I want to understand like better, what's in your opinion, what are the major differences in terms of work culture in Malaysia versus, for example, UK or any other European country that you can highlight?
I think what I would say in regards to working with people in Malaysia, they're more polite than European counterparts generally. I think, people would be more of the Malaysian people would probably be less, pushy when it comes to their career moves or career expectations, even though they're like well in their right to do so. And I think it comes from a respect point of view. I think they have a bit more kind of respect to their more senior peers, which is a good thing. But then also in some cases, it may leave some people frustrated of why they haven't been given an opportunity over someone else. And it could boil down to purely the fact that that other colleague was much more pushy and much more direct with their approach. I think especially in some European countries, there's no need for politeness in work culture. It's just 100% direct. There's no like, hi, how are you? It's just like, what do you want kind of thing. And I think that's one thing you definitely notice there. There's a lot more sort of polite or respectful towards senior peers, which has pros and cons, obviously. That's one of the main things I'd say I've noticed. And you can see some differences between the various ethnicities in Malaysia. Like what I just mentioned there would maybe be more true of the Malay ethnic group, but then the Chinese ethnic group may be more on the pushy side or career driven and be a bit more direct in their approach to things. Something I think you can notice when you're working there.
Overall in Southeast Asia, methods of management, are they different to what is being practiced in Europe, or they're trying to lean towards the same type of practices overall?
I think it's a hard question to answer. I think when the hub was based in the UK, obviously moving to Malaysia, one of the big drivers is saving on cost. And I think they tried to run it as a place where it felt objective focused. Like they used to do this like star of the month, where they would highlight people that had performed really well. And then they had this like spotlight moment for someone that had kind of made a mistake. And they would get them to present the mistake in front of everyone. And I don't really know what the thought process was behind that when moving to Malaysia, because it was never something we had seen in the UK. And I don't think it worked particularly well, because then, I think it just made people feel a bit like either embarrassed and things like that. And then since then, I think it went for a period of feeling a bit more kind of relaxed, maybe as the hub was gained in maturity. And there was a bit more trust of the employees. There's probably initial teething phases where a lot of the people that were hired originally, maybe some of them left and got replaced quite quickly. But then from what I can remember, for around 3 or 4 years, it seemed to be quite stable. I can just in terms of picturing faces of people who I dealt with, it was quite stable. It was quite a fun, relaxed environment. But it was, the only difference I would say, it was slightly more focusing on work rather than people, if that makes sense.
Okay. So one thing that struck me, in fact, was how much more obedient overall the culture was in Southeast Asia, as you say, more respect towards seniors, versus something like that on the Western world, right?
One thing, sorry to interrupt, one thing you really notice is people won't speak up in a large forum if they have a good idea, and they'll almost let someone else take credit for their idea because they didn't want to be seen. And I guess if you're looking at Asia as a whole, I think there's some extremes. You hear in Japan, you can't even leave work until your manager's left work, whereas and you can't propose ideas to your manager because it's they've worked there for longer, they have more experience, so what they say is best, whereas that doesn't go in Europe. Everyone is more has an equal seat to the table. I think what I found with Slumjay, they didn't impose that culture at all. I feel that it was very open, but the culture of the people was a bit more respectful, a bit more reserved, where people potentially wouldn't voice up when they had a good idea because they felt they shouldn't. But it was never something I felt the company implemented.
For example, when I was doing the work in the UK before being transferred to Malaysia, no one was checking my working hours. You see what I mean? Like, as far as the work has been done. But as soon as we moved to Malaysia, working hours became the thing, pretty much. And it's not just because it's something that was imposed at the individual level, but it's more like because if the management felt like if they were giving too much flexibility to some individuals, then other individuals might abuse of the rules, right? So that's why, to keep everyone aligned, eventually they had to practice more strict policies towards working hours, right? Because you could have like some people that just not pull in the effort, to do the job, for example, or not do the hours they expected to do. So that's something I noticed at the very beginning. Did you face any particular challenge with this, like changing managerial style, or? Because I understood you came there as more senior, right? So how was your relationship with your peers? How did they look to you?
I would say, from my personal experience, I didn't have any challenges, but I do know people that did have some challenges. And I think you're right. We were coming there as the more senior staff, with more experience on. And to train the new joiners that were there in KL. So I think, having that obviously prior knowledge, there was a certain expectation on us. But I think, my boss in KL was also European. When the team I was part of was always quite flexible. And I think it was, very trusting. We did, as long as we were doing our job, there was no need to be super, cautious on tracking our time. I think within the team as well, we built quite a strong bond through things outside of work. So although maybe to begin with we were, the more senior people, I think that quickly kind of faded, just more of a team approach, because of how kind of close we were. I know outside of our direct team, there wasn't always that same feeling towards like the sort of HRPS team. So essentially the people doing the support for HRIT. I think there was a bit of like a feeling of there was a bit of an attitude problem. I know some of the other clusters kind of felt that way, and that may be because of this cultural aspect of how some responses to emails would have come. People didn't appreciate some language that was used, but I think within the team on whole, it was pretty well balanced. Outside the team, there may have been a bit of different feelings towards our team. So overall, if you have to qualify your experience in Malaysia in one word, which word will come to your mind? Like overall, as an expatriate worker in Malaysia, how would you define? It could be let's say 2 or 3 words, but like in short sentence, what could you say? I mean, for 2 words, maybe you could say like eye-opening, because it was on like a professional and personal level. I think I went there, and although we were kind of seen as senior, I think I'd only been working for 18 months by the time I arrived. So really, I was actually not particularly senior or not at all in the terms of a whole organisation. And but in terms of maybe knowledge of the company, knowledge of what we were doing, then that was fairly senior. So, and then in those first few years, it was kind of about a lot of knowledge sharing, and then self-development on my side as well, because originally I went with experience on one particular HRIT platform, but it was about gaining more knowledge overall. And then in Malaysia, I moved to a different team. I had my first management position, so professionally it was quite eye-opening in that aspect. And then on the personal level, I think working abroad in a different country, especially a non-European one, and although obviously there's a lot of everyone there spoke English, like we said, it is different culturally. So lets you come away with a different perspective on things, I think, which was something I really enjoyed about being in Malaysia. And yes, I would definitely go back and work there again.
So what advice could you give to professionals who are at the beginning of their career, let's say, and who have opportunities to go and become expatriates somewhere, not necessarily Malaysia, I would say in general Southeast Asia?
I would just say, if the opportunity came to you and you don't have any reason why you can't go, you should go for it, because it's something that many people would probably give up in exchange for that position. So I think if you do have the chance and it's something that you're even half considering, you should just go, take it, do it with open arms and open eyes, and just have the best experience you can. I'd say yes more times than you say no, so that you experience as much as you can. I think maybe in some ways the fact that we didn't have too much expectation of what Malaysia was going to be like made it better. And at that time, I don't think, Instagram was there, because I remember creating my profile, I think, to go to Malaysia to take pictures, but it wasn't like today. Like if we went today, maybe we'd now be like, oh, let's follow some Malaysian influencers to try to understand what it's like. But I think because then it's probably mainly Facebook, and I'm not going to friend some random people in Malaysia, or that search function what didn't really exist on Facebook, or you had Google. So yeah, maybe in some ways not doing research is a better thing to do. So you can go there and just be like, I'm going to have my own experience rather than watch someone else's and try to copy it. So I think that might be a bit of good advice. But yeah, it's definitely something I would recommend. And I think nowadays with WhatsApp, you can be in contact with your family or friends anytime you like. It's not like, you have to wait 7 weeks for post or something. So yeah, I think just go and enjoy it as much as possible.
What are the things that you can criticize from Malaysia? I would say, what are the things that you disliked, I will say, the most overall? It could be
anchovies.
Anchovies.
I don't know. It's okay. So things in terms of things that I missed, definitely I think the seasons. So although coming back to the UK, I'm not really enjoying it being winter, but long nights in the summer is nice. Like in Malaysia, because again close to the equator, it's pretty much like 7 a.m. sunrise, 7 p.m. sundown every day of the year basically. So you kind of do miss the seasons a bit, and sometimes you might miss a bit of cold, fresh air. That would be one thing. I think quite luckily I went when we were quite young, so in terms of life events, I didn't miss too much. There was one friend's wedding that I didn't go to, which I think towards the end when I wanted to leave, that was playing on my mind, getting to, late 20s, 30s, there's going to be more of these key events that if you're in Malaysia, you're going to have to choose to miss. And then probably the distance. If Malaysia was where Dubai was, 1 7-hour flight, you probably could stay there forever. But yeah, 12 to 14 hours, it is a long way, and yeah, you will miss friends and family for sure.
Yeah, and 8 hours difference in winter time, the time zone, right? It also goes some type of challenge. So definitely, in terms of personal relationship, yeah, you with the family, right? It's a huge sacrifice, but on the other side, it's a tremendous opportunity, because you can visit all amazing countries that are nearby, right? Because how strategically it's located in Southeast Asia. I think it's for those who don't know, Air Asia is Malaysian airline, low cost, one of the best in the world, and they connect you with every country in the region, right? You have Perth is 5 hours flight, Bali is 3 hours away, Japan is 6 or 7 hours. Everything is affordable and quite easy. Plus, the standards of living, right? I think one thing that we can highlight is also the experience that you get, because if, as you mentioned, you were staying at your parents before, right, in the room, suddenly you arrive there and you can afford to rent a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom plus apartment with a swimming pool, tennis court, gym, concierge, maid, right, for a fifth or the tenth of the price that you will pay here in London, perhaps, right? So this is definitely, in terms of cost of life benefit, you get much more for your money, and I think that's brilliant. And the healthcare system is also good. I think it's important to highlight, right, for not just healthcare, but for young families, kids as well. They are very well taken care.
Yeah, okay, obviously this was working for a big company where they did look after us well in terms of the whole mobility package.
This podcast is not sponsored by Ministry of Tourism, Malaysia, by the way. No, it's coming from their own experience.
It's I don't think anyone really had kind of a particularly bad thing to say. Like you mentioned, having good quality of private healthcare. Like, we obviously didn't experience the public healthcare because we had private healthcare through work. I think people with kids always said the schools were good. I do think there's this massive, you notice it in like the UK, or I think in Europe, in summer everyone's happier because of the sunlight. I think it's the same there, but it's 365 days a year, it's warm, generally sunny. Of course you have the rainy season, but it just feels a bit more of a happy place because of, and I think a lot of it is to do with the good weather, and you do notice it has an impact on your kind of
absolutely
life.
And it's in terms of the geographical position, I think Malaysia is also well protected from things like earthquakes, like tsunamis and things like that. Obviously floods happen, but floods happen also in the UK here, right? So I think that's also a major plus, that the nature is quite clement on the country.
I think it's if you go to Malaysia either for work or for tourism, there's a lot of good islands and beaches which I think go under the radar because Thailand's so close, but you won't have the same volume of people. It's probably a bit cleaner because of that, but the beaches are just as nice, the water's just as sort of clear and nice as well, so it ticks a lot of boxes. And when you're there, I think we had 25 holidays per year, and I think we had 18 public holidays. So, and like you're mentioning with Air Asia's like, imagine everything EasyJet should be. It actually is good, and it's low cost. So I think I filled a passport in about 3 or 4 years just from, you had to get a stamp every time you left and entered Malaysia, but still, I think we went to Japan, New Zealand, Philippines, Indonesia, Hong Kong, I could sit here for another 10 minutes probably listing places, but it's amazing for opportunities for travel and things like that. That's actually one more thing I didn't like. The airport is so far away from the city. If you can't take the train and you have to take the taxi, it's like 1 hour, so I shouldn't really be complaining too much, but it's annoying when
No, well, very good, very great summary. I think definitely for everyone out there who is still thinking, should they relocate or which country they should relocate, I think I would say Malaysia is definitely should be in their list, to consider, because I know so many people just go, they know Bali, Phuket, right, Dubai, obviously, but somehow Malaysia is going below the radar and underlooked. I think definitely it's one of the top countries in terms of.
I think your tax is going to be between 20 to 24%, no higher than 25, I believe. So obviously comparing that to the UK, it's massive savings, and there are places with lower tax rates, but then standard and cost of living, I don't think probably can compare so much.
Okay, so the key highlights from your experience in Malaysia as expatriate, what did you enjoy doing the most out there?
Probably number one would be traveling to different countries. Then just, the lifestyle would be number two. And number three, I think the expat benefits, I'm not going to lie, is good because it enables you to have a higher standard of life.
Okay. Which countries you visited? Which countries could you recommend once?
It depends. I would say for beaches, if you really just like, beach and the sand, I think maybe Philippines, Boracay was great. City, Tokyo, Hong Kong, very good. And then we went to New Zealand, which was also amazing. Quite similar, obviously, to a European country or in the UK, but much more relaxed. So yeah, that would be my top three to revisit maybe.
Okay, interesting. Yes, so for those who don't know, like Malaysia is super well connected, right, across different like countries, because AirAsia, which is a low coaster that runs from there, literally you can fly to Australia in 5 hours, right, and other places. So yeah, no, definitely. So to conclude, like a few words of conclusion on this one, I think if you have to do it again,
definitely would. I think even like if I could rewind time, I would still say yes. Or if an opportunity came again in the next few years, I'd still probably, I think I'd take it. It'd be a different experience going back like with a family, but I still think it would be a great experience again.
Yeah. And I think it's, as a country, overall, Malaysia is some kind of underrated, right? We keep hearing people move to Bali, people move to Thailand, Phuket, of course, obviously Singapore. But I think in terms of cost of living, right? Yeah. Malaysia just scores so much higher than all of those. And yes, definitely a great place to live, safe, great infrastructure, and well connected. The only challenge, obviously, is time difference, right? That you need to kind of compromise to keep in touch with the family. But overall, amazing and wonderful experiences, obviously. Okay, so thank you very much again for this conversation. I think
it brought back a lot of good memories as well.
Indeed. And we definitely will continue to engage on that topic. I think there is much more to be said. I think we need to have at least 1 hour conversation about the food in Malaysia, that's for sure. So yeah, thank you for watching. That concludes this first episode of podcast of Truly Innovative Workplace Experience. Thank you.
Thanks.